And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode 15, I want to give a quick shout out to Grind Clothing Co. I heard their owner's a pretty cool guy, but the owner's not just a cool guy. We also have our second merch drop. So make sure to go follow them on Instagram because the link to that merch drop is in their bio. And you can also find the link to our new merch in the description below and in our YouTube bio. Also, want to make a quick mention to Revved Up recaps because after every Detroit Pistons game, you can find us talking about that matchup and what went wrong, what went right, and we really get into the knit and grit of the Detroit Pistons, and we really enjoy doing it. We hop on Zoom and just give 20 to 25 minutes about and just talking about that matchup and the little intricate details in that matchup. So we are in episode 15, and today with the most recent trade of James Wiseman, we acquired him in this last week, and we kind of want to talk about how we can salvage James Wiseman as a franchise and what that might look like. And then we also want to kind of talk about, as Pistons fans, what we should expect from James in these last 25, 24 games of the season. So we're going to really get into the details of what that might look like. So first, to prepare for this episode, I watched a lot of film, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because as Pistons fans, we can see who passes the eye test kind of early because of a lot of projects that we've drafted that just did not pan out. And guys like Stanley Johnson, we knew halfway through his rookie season, he wasn't going to be the guy we needed him to be, the superstar guy. And when I watch James Wiseman, he's got the potential. And you know what? Before I get into that, I want to know your thoughts on this mix-up of players that I think resemble James Wiseman.
All right.
I'm watching his film, and I'm like, man, he's got so much length. He's kind of thicker, bigger build, but he's quick with the basketball. He's got that jumper. And then he posterizes people endlessly each and every night. I kind of see Anthony Davis having a baby with Andre Drummond and then James Wiseman coming out. What are your thoughts on that comparison?
It's not a terrible one. I'm just wondering where you get the defensive side of things in there.
Right.
Drummond, he's a great defender in his own way. Anthony Davis, I'm sorry, you're trash at defense. You're not as good as what people say you are. But
clip it.
It's not a terrible combination. I just would bring in the defense side of things because James Wiseman is a beast on defense. Right. Otherwise, it's a safe comparison.
Yeah, you just look at the build and you know, a lot of guys his size in today's NBA are a little bit skinnier and a little bit more slender. You see guys like Chet Holmgren and Nick Claxton, but he's already thicker than those guys. So that's the reason why I kind of get that like Andre Drummond type build. But so in the end, I'm excited about James Wiseman. I know people, it's kind of mixed emotions on this trade. In the end, I think the payoff for this trade might be better than what people expect, or it could go down in history as one of the worst trades ever. Easily could happen. But as far as how we can salvage James Wiseman and his past of being a basketball player, where did you kind of start off when preparing for this episode?
I went back all the way to high school. Now, I went back that far because you can't just base what you've seen off of Wiseman just in the NBA, because he has played limited games for being a third-year vet. And it's not a vet, really, but he just hasn't played as many games as what most players at this point have played in.
Right.
And so I went all the way back to high school because you want to start from scratch pretty much.
Totally.
Who is he? So he, in his senior year, Gatorade Player of the Year, led his team with a 24-8 record and a berth in the Class AAA state tournament quarterfinals. Didn't win all the way, but still.
Right.
His high school stats, He averaged 25.8 points per game, 14.8 rebounds per game, 5.5 blocks per game, and like 2 steals per game.
Right.
And his coach at that time said James is practically unguardable and demands a double or triple team almost every time he touches the ball. Like,
I love it.
okay, that's already a good start.
Right.
Then he ended up being the number 1 ranked prospect in the country in his class for 2019, McDonald's All-American, and then he was the number 2 overall pick in the NBA draft.
Right.
An ESPN analyst wrote down the strengths, the weaknesses, and the bottom line with Wiseman.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into too much depth with the strength and the weaknesses.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is a long, athletic lefty with long arms, agile feet, and early signs of skill. Wiseman is loaded with upside and a very exciting long-term prospect. And that was when he was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And then in that top 100 class for ESPN, I highlighted key guys in the top 24 that are in the NBA.
Right.
There's not as many that you would think, but shout out to one of our current players, Isaiah Stewart,
Yeah.
who was ranked 3rd in that class from ESPN.
That's pretty cool.
It went James Wiseman, Cole Anthony, Stu, Anthony Edwards, and RJ Hampton in the top 5.
Okay. And they're all active players, like big time roles on their team.
There were like 4 or 5, like 7 or 8 guys in the top 24 that aren't in the NBA.
Right.
But there's a lot of good players in that top 100, in the top 24. But yeah, the fact that Stu was that close to Wiseman, okay. But yeah, Wiseman, he's legit. He's legit ever since he stepped foot on the court. And even in college. Granted, college was a disaster for him.
Right.
But that was not his fault.
No.
That was just the family situation. And Penny Hardaway. But in just 3 games, he averaged 19.7 points per game, 10.7 rebounds per game, 5.5 blocks a game, and like a steal a game.
5.5 blocks a game playing D1 basketball.
And it was just 3 games. In just 3 games, he played 69 minutes, had 59 points, 32 rebounds, and 9 blocks.
So what you're kind of saying as far as how James Wiseman's salvageable is the resume doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Stats don't lie.
Yeah.
That he's proven to be a baller from a young age and that he has grown up and been developed by big schools like Memphis. We see in our very own Jalen Duren come from that program, who actually got to play a lot for that program. And stats don't lie. Skill doesn't lie. He is salvageable just off of skill alone. Yeah.
Every single opportunity he's gotten and every single level he's played on, he's stepped up to the challenge.
Right.
Because you even look at his first career game and his second career game in the NBA. His first career game, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals in 24 minutes. And his second career game, 18 points, 8 rebounds, 3 blocks in 25 minutes. Like, he can play. He's had a tough situation, and that was out of his control. Because you have the Warriors, who have a terrible season, one of the worst seasons in a while.
Right.
And it was out of their control, really, because all of their key guys got injured. And Wiseman got drafted into a tough situation where all they needed to be successful was their guys healthy. Because you saw that in the next season. Like, they were already in the playoffs again. And so he just needed time to develop, and he didn't really get the opportunity to with that team.
Right. When I was kind of looking at if James Wiseman's salvageable, I think the Pistons kind of have to flip their focus of what it has kind of been up until this point this season. One thing that the Pistons aren't focused on in general is passing the ball to the bigs in the paint and getting out of the way and letting the bigs do their thing and back down guys. So in order for Wiseman to be salvageable and to re-up and reboot his career is with Jalen Duren, he hasn't necessarily, we've seen signs and a lot of opportunity of him backing down guys and being able to pull off hook shots. But that's James Wiseman bread and butter. Yeah. And that's not necessarily what Isaiah Stewart's doing every night. And so what we need to do is flip our focus from these high 3-point line screens and let James Wiseman back down guys in the paint, give him the ball and let him go to work. give him his looks. And the reason why I'm happy that Sadiq Bey is gone, if James Wiseman's going to be on our team, because Sadiq Bey takes a lot of touches away from guys. And if they both play together, I don't think it would mix well.
Oh, I don't think so.
So that's why if we are taking in a guy like James Wiseman, I'm happy it was Sadiq Bey that left. It's hard for me to say.
Yeah.
But in the end, for James Wiseman to succeed, I think Sadiq would have to leave, because I think Sadiq is a very Klay Thompson-esque of what James Wiseman was playing with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest problem that happened with James Wiseman in Golden State was he wasn't always involved in every tier of their offense. When you have that many superstars that have so many touches, you're just he's not being involved as much as he needs to be. And I think what's so good and why I think it's going to be a good fit is we need a guy that's involved in every tier of our offense that can set the screens, but then also cut and be able to back guys down. And I think Jalen Duren will develop that, but I think Wiseman is already there and is a little bit more skilled offensively than Duren is, and Duren's a little bit more of a better defender. I think they are going to complement each other well because of each other's play styles. So what I'm hoping is when Cade's back, we know that he's a solid passer. He's not necessarily pass first, but he is a skilled passer. He's shown that he can get double-digit passing almost each and every night. And then we know that Killian is a pass-first guard that is looking for those pick-and-roll opportunities. And Jaden Ivey is starting to show that he can be a good passer and is kind of giving us looks at that a bit passing ability. So that's why I think he's salvageable, because I think he's going to fill a role that the Pistons need filled.
Yeah. And you look at the defensive side of things. Not that Duren is a bad defender, because he's one of the best defenders in the league for a rookie. Stu is not as good defensively.
I think the size, the biggest thing.
It's his size. If he was bigger, oh my goodness, he could have so much potential, but he's just not there height-wise. And so when you have, like I mentioned in the Celtics recap recently, how we needed size, and then this trade happened, and we got size.
Right.
Like Wiseman is huge. He is 7 foot, like 220 or something like that. And he's extremely long and versatile, and he can move fast.
Yeah.
Like he can guard around the perimeter, and he can guard you in the paint.
Yep.
He's that fast.
Quick feet.
And so when you have a guy who can move fast and play all positions really, just in the sense of guarding them.
Right.
That's huge for us.
Yeah.
Because I don't want Duren guarding around the perimeter. Not saying he couldn't, because I believe he could, but it's just, he's not as fast as guards are. And so it's kind of like, if he jumps out for a block, he's going to get blown by every single time.
Or he's going to foul them.
Yeah. And that happens time and time again. And Duren just needs to learn about his mistakes, and that's it. But when you have Wiseman who can do all these things, that's only going to make Duren better.
Yeah.
Because Wiseman is going to take more of the, I'm going to put pressure on everybody, and let's see if they try to give the ball down in the paint.
Totally.
Because if they do, you're just going to block it every single time. And we know that's for a fact. So the offensive side of things, just not in the defensive standpoint, because I've just covered that.
Right.
But the offensive side of things, Wiseman can pop out and hit the three.
Yeah.
So he's going to become much more of a big threat stretch four than Stu even.
Oh, for sure.
Because the fact that he's 7 foot,
Yep.
he can put the ball on the floor, he can hit the shot, he can pretty much do everything and more that Stewart can't do.
Right.
I just think that might take away playing time from Stu, but Stu is very valuable to this team still, in the sense of he is a leader. He works his tail off. Every single opportunity he gets, he's going to go out there and do his best.
Totally.
So when you have a guy like that who can come off the bench in the future, even with Wiseman in the lineup, we're fine.
Yeah. One thing that I loved that Troy Weaver said after this trade happened, he hopped on Bally Sports before, I believe, the Celtics game. And he said, to be able to play against and compete against teams like the Knicks, who have a big size, Cavaliers with Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, these guys that are these two massive human beings in the paint playing next to each other, we needed to make a move. And I think that slightly was a shot at Isaiah, just because we've seen him struggle so much against those duos. I think that Troy Weaver saw this mismatch against playing against teams like that and was like, we're changing that. We got to fix that immediately because we got exposed by teams like the Brooklyn Nets with Nicholas Claxton and Kevin Durant, who's no longer on the team. But then, we'd play Giannis and Brook Lopez and then get exposed because of that size, because we just couldn't compete. Say goodbye to that issue, my friend, because James Wiseman and Jalen Duren, dude, those two guys in the paint, I just got the chills, dude. That's going to be awesome. And those two guys, I really do think they should start together. I really do. I know that before James Wiseman was ruled out against, I'm not sure, whatever team we played against last.
The Raptors.
The Raptors. He got ruled out because the trade wasn't going through yet. But I think I believe they had him in for Duren. I don't like that. I want to see Duren at, I think I'd rather see Duren at the 5, I think, just because he's a little bit more paint based, and then Duren at the 4. I mean, then Wiseman at the 4. And I think that would be a fun duo down there. And dude, good luck trying to score on them fellas, because you ain't getting any shots up. And I love that duo and the opportunity that duo has.
Yeah, I think those two to get together, I think we could easily beat down on the Cavs bigs. Dude. We could easily beat down on the Knicks bigs. Dude. The Bucks bigs.
Yep.
Like, oh, okay. The Bucks. Giannis is a generational talent.
Right.
So,
but for sure, Cavs.
Yeah, Cavs for sure. Now, outside of with Cleveland, you also have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland.
But we're talking bigs. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
But the bigs on those teams are, well, big for them.
Right.
So if we can compete with those kind of teams, because the NBA is moving back to the bigs.
Yes,
we
talked about that in the James Wiseman trade episode.
The last couple successful teams in the NBA, what have they had in common? They're bigs. They've just been pounding the paint time and time again, and that's a big reason for success in this league.
I mean, look at the Memphis Grizzlies in the West. They got
Steven Adams, Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah, I mean, those are two massive human beings. And, yes, we need to start with the East, because if you don't make it out of the East, you're not making the finals. But those are teams that when the Pistons start competing and start chasing championships, that Memphis Grizzlies team is going to be waiting there to contend with us. And that's who we will be going up against. And, I mean, that has to be noted that the small ball that happened 5 years ago when Draymond Green was on his uprise, that part of the NBA is donezo now. That's not happening anymore. You need to have two massive building size guys down in the paint to be able to shot block and to be able to, one, not foul, but then also contend shots. So I think it's a great move if that's the way the Pistons are going. And I think the Pistons are forced to go that way when you get beat so badly by teams like the Cavs, like the Celtics, like the New York Knicks. I think you have to make the change. And Troy Weaver said, dude, I'm going to make the change. And he made it happen.
Yeah, and the one big need that our team has is defense. Yep. We need a defender. Yeah, Sadiq in his own way was great at defense, but Wiseman is an even better defender than Sadiq was. And so when you add a guy who can guard all 5 positions and is still one of the most gigantic players in the league, that is very, very, very useful.
Right.
Because when you have a team like Boston, because realistically, Jason Tatum can play the 4. So you have Jason Tatum, Robert Williams, and Al Horford, who are all giants.
Yeah.
And you can contend with that with Wiseman, with Duren, and then Stu even.
And then you add Cade scoring, you add Ivy scoring.
Bojan.
And then you see yourself being able to keep games close against teams like the Celtics. And that's huge, because that's who you're going to be facing late in playoffs.
Yeah, and I really think we got a gem here, because I looked up and was finding out what his former players were saying, what his former coach was saying, what Bob Myers, their GM, was saying. Like Draymond, being moved to Detroit is a great opportunity to restart his career. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I feel like in this trade, I think James Wiseman gets what he needs. The Warriors got what they need. James Wiseman needs to go somewhere where he can play and get minutes and reps, and he's not expected to compete at a championship level. He's super talented, super skilled, just hasn't had the reps. Klay Thompson, I just know he's going to be a heck of a player in this league. I'm going to miss him.
Mhm.
Steve Kerr. It was difficult for me to give James the runway that he needed. He was great. Every single day he came to work with a great attitude.
That's good to hear.
Positive spirit. He's everything you look for in a young player in terms of his approach and talent. But the timing was difficult. Given what he needed and where we were as a franchise, I was all in on drafting James when we did. I was a part of the group, loved the ability, loved everything that we saw. And like it just goes down the list. Like Steph Curry loves him. Bob Myers was debating whether or not they even need to trade him because he didn't want to.
Right.
And so when you have all of these top talented tier guys in the league that are known for being who they are, saying that we don't really want to trade him, but he needs to be traded to get a real opportunity to be successful in this league.
Yeah.
Like that just, it shows you how good Wiseman is and what his ceiling is, because there's a reason why he was the number 1 ranked prospect in his class. There was a reason why he was taken in the top 2 picks in the draft.
Totally.
There's a reason why he was Gatorade Player of the Year, McDonald's All-American. Like, he has majority of the awards that you would want. He has a huge stat line, high school, college-wise.
Yep.
And the start of his career in the NBA was great. He just dealt with a couple injuries.
Yeah.
But we have a gem here, and we have a chance at something huge. Now, there is a lot of risk with it because we get rid of a guy like Sadiq Bey, who
consistent.
He was arguably one of the best shooters in Pistons history.
Set records.
Yeah. And he's still only 23 years old. And so we're losing a key piece in our foundation, but we're adding a new key piece in that I think will last even longer than Sadiq would have.
Right. So now we kind of covered of how we can salvage James Wiseman, what that looks like. Now I kind of want to talk about what we can expect from Wiseman in these last 24 games. So I'm going to give a couple of my points, then I'll whip it right back around to you, Ryan. I think these last 24 games-ish, we should expect a small sample size of what him and Cade will accomplish. Yep. I really believe this move was intended to work out best when Cade's on the floor. I don't think it's necessarily a trade to necessarily fix all the problems that our current roster has. I think what Weaver's thinking about is how well Cade will mix with this guy, because when Cade's your franchise guy, you got to put guys around him that will complement him. I think that's exactly what James Wiseman will be. So I think expect our offensive rebounding to get significantly better, just with a little bit more size. With 2 huge guys in the paint, we can expect to be our offense to be more focused in the paint even more than it was before with Duren. So that's what I'm kind of expecting. Don't get your hopes up too much if you're the fan base, because this is really just kind of getting our puzzle pieces. So then when Cade comes back, he's the last piece, and the next season can kind of be the whole puzzle is put together, and then let's really judge the status of where the Pistons are at. What are some of your thoughts of what we can expect?
I think he's going to get a lot of playing time, a lot more than what he's gotten so far in Golden State. I don't think he's going to take away minutes from any of our guys. I think he's going to, if he does take away minutes, it's going to be like Corey Joseph or like Isaiah Livers and Hami. Those are going to be the guys that he takes minutes away from. There's no way that Casey's giving all of Duren's minutes to Wiseman. I want Wiseman and Duren together in the lineup. Me too. I don't like, if Wiseman's the 6th man, I'm fine with that too. Right. Just as long as he's getting reps. Yeah. Because that's what he needs and that's what we need. Because if he doesn't play as much as he should, then it's kind of like, why did we trade him for him? Like, why did we give up Bay and why did we give up Kevin Knox for a guy that really isn't going to play for us all that much? So what I want to see is I want to see him just slowly progress into the lineup, not like force him in right away and be like, yeah, he's our guy. Because that puts a damper on Jalen Duren. That puts a damper on Stu, because then it's like, great. So all that I've worked for, all my hard work means nothing. Right. And so I really hope that they slowly urge him into the lineup, not like forcing him in right away, because forcing a young player who doesn't really know the team, that can be hard on them. So I think slowly bringing them into the lineup will definitely help. And then I also want to see him at least play 10 minutes at most. That's like the minimum I want to see.
Right.
I want to see him get playing time. And I think that's going to improve our offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding, our overall defense. It's going to help Duren be more successful because his problem, it's not really a problem, but it's a good problem to have, is his game against the Spurs where he went off.
Yeah.
Toronto game planned for him following that game, and you could tell. So when you have another big like Wiseman who would get attention too, that focuses like majority of the attention on Wiseman because then it's like, wait, who do we guard here?
Right.
So if the attention's going to Wiseman, Duren, you're going to be wide open. You're going to get your opportunities. So this is going to be beneficial to everybody on the team because it gives a bigger threat to the overall impact of the game in the sense that you have to focus on more than one player on this Pistons team now. It isn't just Duren or Ivy or Bojan or even Cade when he's healthy. There are multiple options on this team that you have to worry about. And so this is going to be big for Wiseman, big for Duren, and big for our overall success.
Totally. Stats wise of what we can expect from him coming off the bench. So I'm expecting like bench minutes to be like 10 to 20 minutes coming off the bench. We want, I think, in like the 10-point range and then 8 or more rebounds, maybe hover around 5. I think we would be cool with that. As far as starter minutes, I'm kind of expecting starter minutes to be around like 30 to 35. We want Wiseman in the 15 to 20 range, kind of what Jaden Ivey and Duren have been doing, where they're kind of hovering around from like 12 to 20 nightly. They're kind of in between there. I would like that from Wiseman these last 24 games. And then especially starting minutes, I want him 8 or above for rebounds. He can't be below that because Duren needs help in that category. And we've shown that Duren can be boxed out when 2 guys are worrying about him in the paint. So stats wise, what are you kind of expecting from Wiseman in these last 24?
I'm expecting like 12 points, 8 boards, and like 2 blocks. That's about it. Because I think if you go lower than that, it's worrisome.
Yeah.
If you go higher than that, you're like, oh, this is a steal.
You're blown out of the water.
But if it's at least 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, I'm chill.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, we got the value we wanted to get in return for Bay.
Yeah.
Because Bay would have put up the same stat line pretty much, minus the 2 blocks. But if we can get that in return, I think that'll be a sign of relief in the sense of,
for sure,
like we just gave up one of our better offensive scorers for a guy that really hasn't panned out so far, but has all the intangibles and everything around him to be successful in this league. We just need to unlock him. And so if he can come in and contribute that much at least, then I'm happy.
Totally. I totally agree because, and I'm fine with the goose egg every once in a while. I think with James Wiseman, we want to judge him every 5 games. Give him every 5 and just look at the last 5 games. Okay, his debut plays well, but then next game puts up a goose egg. Don't get discouraged. Let it be. Let's look at it every 5 games and let's really evaluate where he's at. And then also let's think about it too from the eyes of when Cade is here. How will Cade play with him? As a Pistons fan, Pistons fan base, we know Cade's game. We know what will play well around him. So I think that's another way we should evaluate James Wiseman's play is, okay, how is he going to play next to Cade? And I think that's going to be really exciting seeing those 2 guys play together because they're both, I think, beyond their years in their play style. Because when you watch James Wiseman in the paint and go to work, you're like, man, he looks like an 8-year vet with that footwork. Then he struggles in other categories. But I'm excited to see what is in store for the Detroit Pistons and James Wiseman in the development and the chemistry too. I'm excited to see how these guys get along. I know the team overall really did like Sadiq, and we saw Jaden Ivey and Isaiah Stewart publicly grieve the trade of Sadiq Bey. So I'm excited to see how James mixes with the team as well.
James Wiseman is still only 21 years old. Just as old as us, which is crazy to think, but he's still very young. And so when you combine that with a young team in general, chances are everything's going to click. And I think this trade benefits every single player on our team.
Yeah.
Bay, it doesn't really benefit him in the Pistons category anymore, or Kevin Knox, but I think it still benefited them in the sense of where they're going, because Bay can now compete and not have to be the guy and just play basketball on a good team. And then Kevin Knox can just be a key role player on a Portland Trailblazer team that has potential to make the playoffs and has potential to do something. And so I think this trade benefited everybody in it. And this is going to be a good step in the right direction for our young Pistons core.
Yeah, I'm very excited for what's in store. It's going to be very interesting. It's kind of felt like a soap drama. Like this season, it's been like so many different emotions of like wins, the highs of wins and the lows of losses, and the dramatic trades of guys you like and that you've learned to love. It's like, whoa, like this season's been kind of crazy, and Cade being out and dealing with that. And so I think there's shine in the struggle, you know? So I think we just got to look at the shine, and James Wiseman, I think, is going to shine on the Detroit Pistons. Well, that will do it for episode 15. Make sure to go follow Grind Clothing Co. on Instagram and go buy some merch. We got these hats, the gray version of these hats on our merch store, so you can find the links to those in the description below. And then make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next Revved Up recap.